Hello YouTubers and fellow hams. Well, in this video I'm experimenting with the Chameleon portable loop. As you know from the previous video, I modified the box to allow me to use any old coax for the outer loop rather than Chameleon's coax. My goal was to lower the range of the loop and get it down to 60 meters to allow me to try to operate 60 meters portable with it one of these days when it's not windy. And I was successful. But I also did some playing around. The coax that I had to work with was quite long. And so the first thing I tried was just throwing it on there with multiple turns just to see what would happen. I'm playing around with the Chameleon loop. As you know from a previous video, I modified it so that I could use regular coax. The Chameleon provided coax, as we saw in the previous video, they short the ends of the coax. And then in the box, the tuning box, they only have the center conductor hooked up. And I shorted the connectors in the box so that both the shield and center would be used on any old coax instead of just the Chameleon coax. The other thing I did, by the way, is I put a piece of red tape on each end of the Chameleon coax. I mean, it's already got a little green tag here with a part number, but I didn't want to ever make the mistake of accidentally using the Chameleon coax as a jumper. It's shorted. That would be a bad day. Let the magic smoke out of my transmitter. So I went ahead and put a piece of red tape on each end just to remind me. I also put one in the center, by the way, so I have a nice visual cue when I set the loop up as to where the center of the coax is so I can make the loop symmetrical quickly without having to fiddle with it. So anyway, that's that. Since I've modified the box, I can now use any old coax to make the loop. And I had a length of LMR 400. I'll have to look at it. It's heavy, heavily shielded and thick coax, so good for messing around with magnetic loops. But it's way too long. Just for the heck of it, I put it on the loop just to see, and it's 3 turns, right? So I thought, well, let's see what it looks like. I hooked up the Vna and I swept it, and I could get it all the way down to 2.8 or 2.9 megahertz, somewhere way down there. So I fiddled with it, and I targeted 3940 in the 75 meter band, which is a frequency a lot of locals use out here. And here's a Vna plot of the loop as it's tuned right now. And as you can see, the SWR is right down to 1:1 at 3940. It works. Now it's not going to be efficient. It's multiple turns, you know, and that's going to increase the DC resistance, and the efficiency is going to dive. But I'm going to play around with it some. My actual goal here is I'm going to take this coax and I'm going to cut a shorter length of it. The Chameleon provided coax, when it's on the loop, creates a 3-foot diameter, about 1 meter diameter loop. And I used the Vna to profile it and see what its range was, and it was quite broad. It went down to, I think, somewhere between 6.8 and 6.9 megahertz. And it went all the way up to 32 megahertz. Okay, I had to cut there for a moment because I was working on doing a QSO with a couple of local guys on the loop on 80 meters during the day. Well, they're local, so ground wave. But they heard me, and, well, here's the clip.
Well, you're solid S6 over here. Unfortunately, the noise level is about the same, but you're fully copyable, Kevin.
Well, I guess that's a successful test. At least, you know, it's local, but you guys can hear me. That's something. I'll have to try some whisper broadcasts with it later tonight after 80 opens up and see how far out it gets heard. But hey, thanks for the test. I do appreciate it. And even though you had to jump through a bunch of hoops, Bob, I do appreciate it. WD9HFP, KB9RLW, Portable 7.
Okay, Kevin, not a problem. The problem was with me and my fumbling mind and hands. All right, I'm going back to 2 meters. You need anything else, just yell and scream. and I will fully comply. Billy, D9HFP, cleared.
All right, Bob, thanks very much. 73 to you. And Bill, thank you as well. I do appreciate it. This is KB9RLW Portable 7, 73.
Alrighty. So that I could help if any at all. Yeah, I just heard the tail end of the conversation. So I decided to come up here on frequency and listen anyway. KB9RLW, WA6I2Y. Going back to email. Bye now.
So, like I said, they're local. They're just a few miles away down in Kingman, which I can actually see from up here on the hill. But they did hear me, and that's with this and 5 watts from the Yaesu FT817. So, you know, it does work. I'm sure the efficiency is terrible with 3 turns, but it does work. So that's why I modified this box, to be able to do these kind of experiments with this hardware, because the construction on this stand and the box and the coupling loop is really nice. I mean, it's expensive, but it's a well-built product. And now I can do a lot of playing around. So what I'm going to do from here, I'd like to get this video done today, but I'm not going to have the time to do the experiments I want to do because they're going to require nighttime. So it's going to be tomorrow, I think, before I get to edit it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this alone with this kind of messy 3-turn coaxial loop on it, and do some whisper broadcasting or beaconing tonight after the sun goes down and 80 opens up, to see how far out this is getting from inside the rig with a half a watt, or actually I'll be using the Zactec beacon, so it'll be 200 to 300 milliwatts on this contraption inside the RV. I'll be surprised if it gets heard at all. I mean, well, it is whisper. I guess I won't be that surprised if it gets heard, but I'm curious to see how far out it's going to get. You'll notice the loop's orientation changed. As we were trying to make that QSO on 3940, they couldn't hear me very well. I couldn't hear them very well. They were right down on the noise. So I had Bob do a 10 count, and I started rotating the loop. Remember, these magnetic loops are highly directional off the sides of the loop. Perpendicular to the loop is a null. That's what makes them nice for tuning out noise. And as I rotated it, they really came up. They came from about an S2 to S3 up to the S6, S7 range on the receiver. So came up big time, and then they told me, yeah, you came up too, and they could both copy me. So it did get out. Anyway, after I do the whisper tests tonight, which I'll probably throw that little segment in right after this, tomorrow I'm going to take this coax and I'm going to cut it down, and I'm going to make a 4-foot diameter loop. Just going to increase the diameter of the loop by 1 foot, and see if that's enough to push it down to 60 meters, to 5 megahertz. Yeah, probably won't be enough. But that's what I want to do, is I want to get just a slightly wider loop to bring this thing's range down. As we saw, when I profiled the loop, it goes way high right now. It goes up to 32 megahertz. Wow, that's quite a range. I figure if I can get a little bit bigger outer loop and I can get it down to 60 meters, hopefully it'll still go all the way up to 10 meters, and I'll have effectively increased the operating range of the loop with a very simple modification of just a slightly larger outer diameter. Well, it's the next day. My experiments last night with Whisper were not fruitful. No surprise. It was really haphazard the way it was put together with those 3 turns just wrapped around there. I was surprised the SWR was as low as it was. But inside the RV, it's not going to perform. You might wonder why I'm not shooting all this outside. Well, it's windy. It's windy here in Kingman. 20 to 30 mile an hour winds, gusty, blustery. It's windy again today, so I have to shoot in here. This little stand that Chameleon provides is not all that stable, and outside it would undoubtedly be blown over. But I will be taking it out to play around with the FT817. Anyway, up to what's going on. So, as we saw yesterday, I just threw the coax on there, managed to get 3 turns, about a 3-foot diameter or 1 meter diameter loop, and it went right down to 80 meters with a 1-to-1 SWR. it would not be all that efficient. 3 turns, the DC resistance is higher on the outer loop, the efficiency would go down, and the voltage would be higher across the capacitor. I've noticed with multi-turn loops, as you add turns, that voltage goes up. And I think it's acting a little like a transformer. You know, you got a single turn primary and a multi-turn secondary, and the voltage goes up. Just my speculation there. Anyway, what I've done today is I cut that coax down to make a bigger loop. I was shooting for about 4 feet in diameter. I ended up around 47 inches or so on diameter, and I found out that I could just get halfway down the 60 meter band. So the upper 2 slots in 60 meters I can tune, but I can't quite get down there. So I think you'd want to shoot for about a 50-inch diameter loop. 50 inches, I'll figure the metric out and put it up here somewhere. And then you'd get down to 60 meters. Now what happened at the top end? Did it come down? Yeah, it did. It came down to just below 12 meters. So you could still get 15 meters with this longer coax. So a 50-inch loop on the outer loop gets you down to 60 meters. 1-to-1 SWR. Here's a couple of Vna scans. This is the bottom end with the bigger loop. And as you can see, we're just about halfway through the 60 meter segment there. The top end, here we go. This is a Vna scan. And as you can see, we're not quite getting up to 12 meters. So you still have multiple bands. You got 60 meters, you got 40 meters, 20, 17, and 15 meters with the bigger loop on the outside. What I did discover is that this part of the shaft here is fully extended, and from the coax to the connectors is about 46 or 45 and a half inches. So you can't quite get to the full 50 this way. With a 50-inch diameter loop, you'd then end up like about 51 this way, which is fine. You know, you still get that longer coax, that longer outer perimeter. The bigger loop and the frequency drops down. So simple modification. After I've modified the box to allow me to use regular coax, I can cut my own coax lengths and make my own loops of whatever size I want or how many turns I want to experiment with, and it's working. It's working great. Makes it a little more flexible, doesn't it? Anyway, now I have a coax that lets me get down to 60 meters. And one of these nights, when there's no wind and it's warm, I'm going to set this up outside with the FT817 and a light. I'll need like a camping light or something, and try to work a little 60 meters in the evening with it. So you'll probably see that in a future video. You know, this hardware is going to pop up several times as I experiment with different loops. So that was the experiment today. Modifying the Chameleon loop to get down to 60 meters. Easy enough. Cut yourself a length of coax to get you a 50-inch diameter outer loop. And if you want to figure out the length, one of my favorite numbers, pi, which, by the way, here's an easy way to remember the first 3 digits of pi. If you take the numbers and you flip them around, they spell the word pi, P-I-E. So flip it back around and you have 3.14. So if we take 50 inches and we multiply that by 3.14, we get the length of coax that we need in inches. So that's how you can figure out the length of coax you need to cut. Take the diameter of the loop you're targeting, multiply that by 3.14, and that gives you the length, which is the circumference of the circle. That's the relationship of pi. Pi is the relationship between the circumference and the diameter. Conversely, if you know the circumference of something and you want to figure the diameter, you just divide the circumference by 3.14 and you get the diameter. So 50 inches times 3.14 gives us this for the length of coax that you need in inches to make an outer loop that takes the Chameleon down to 60 meters. There you go. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, if you're not already a subscriber, click to subscribe. Join us on the Facebook channel for discussion about the videos. And if you'd like to help support this channel, please click to support me on my Patreon page.